Have you ever felt this way? You give your time, your attention, your most precious energy, and he suddenly seems to lose interest. He treats you like just another one, leaving you confused, frustrated, and powerless. Perhaps you've tried everything, being the perfect partner, justifying his coldness, offering second, third, even 10th chances, and still, nothing. He remains this frustrating mystery, always on the verge of giving himself complete, but never actually doing so. Today, here at Power Mindset, inspired by Robert Johnson's profound teachings on the male psyche, you will discover an inconvenient truth. A truth that will shake what you thought you knew about attraction and radically transform your relationships. And this truth is, this sensitive yet powerful entity doesn't respond to desperate pleas or kindness. It instinctively responds to what you make it feel. And when you understand exactly how and where to touch these emotional strings, when you apply the blow to the ego in the correct way, you can make him desire you with an intensity that surprises even himself. Think about you day and night. Seek you with a consuming urgency. No, these aren't cheap games or manipulation for egomaniacs. We're talking about understanding the male mind, according to Robert Johnson's perspective, from a position of strength, emotional intelligence, using this knowledge to your advantage, with calm, presence, and strategy. Like a truly confident woman. The difference is crucial. Manipulating is trying to control the other out of insecurity, while what I propose here is understanding the deeper dynamics of male attraction to create an authentic connection, but on your own terms. It's an approach that places you at the center of your own emotional life, not as a victim of his inconsistencies, but as a magnetic force he can't resist. A man's ego operates in a different system. Deep down, as Johnson helps us understand, there's a boy hungry for recognition, hidden in the body of an apparently confident adult. Each gesture of admiration feeds him, and each sign of neediness on your part inflates this ego even more. That's why the game loses its fun when you become predictable. But it is precisely here, in this apparent strength of his, the need for validation, that lies his Achilles heel and your greatest strategic opportunity. Think about it. Behind that facade of indifference, that apparent emotional independence, there is an almost childlike vulnerability. The most powerful man, the most successful, the most apparently unshakable, all carry within them that hungry boy that Johnson identified in his studies on the male psyche. This is the fascinating paradox. The stronger the male ego appears externally, the more fragile and dependent on validation it is internally, like an imposing castle built on quicksand. And the more you try to fill this need of his with your constant validation, the more you sink into the sand with him. This is the secret that few know and even fewer apply. But first, if this knowledge is opening doors in your mind, leave your like and subscribe to the channel so we can continue this journey of emotional empowerment together. Each subscription lets me know you liked it and helps me create more. Now, the secret that few know and even fewer apply. If you, with the wisdom of a confident woman, interrupt that constant flow of validation he expects, and that most women serve him on a silver platter. If you stop being his predictable source of admiration and security, you leave him emotionally in the dark. And this void, this sudden absence of your affirmative mirror, awakens something incredible in him. It's like creating a vacuum in nature. It needs to be filled. It's a psychological law as powerful as a physical law. When you remove your validation, not with anger or resentment, but with the serenity of someone who knows their own value, you create a space that he feels an almost physical need to fill. The man who was getting used to your constant adoration, who perhaps was even beginning to devalue it precisely because it was so easy to obtain, suddenly feels disoriented. It's as if the ground disappeared beneath his feet. That reliable source of confirmation of his worth, of his masculinity, of his power of attraction, suddenly becomes unpredictable, uncertain. The urgent need to reaffirm himself through you, to reconquer that special feeling that you, subtly, withdrew. It is exactly there that the spark of obsession begins. And how do you do this? With 3 lethal weapons of psychology, inspired by Robert Johnson's understanding of First, emotional scarcity. This is the art of transforming your validation, your compliments, your admiration, your full attention, from a common resource into a precious commodity. When you offer validation constantly, it devalues. When you make it scarce, judiciously offered only when genuinely deserved, its value skyrockets. It's not about pretending or playing games, but about establishing an honest pattern where your approval has meaning, because it's not automatically dispensed. It's like the diamond that owes its preciousness not only to its beauty, but to its rarity. Think of the paradox of water and diamond. Water, essential for life, has low economic value, while diamond, dispensable for survival, has extraordinary value. This is the labor theory applied to emotion. Your validation, when earned with effort, becomes a valuable prize. When freely distributed, it becomes as common as the air we breathe, vital, but ignored. Emotional scarcity doesn't mean coldness or distance. It's a subtle recalibration. When he does something genuinely impressive or touching, you offer your full recognition, your sincere admiration. But for the small, everyday things, for the basic behaviors that should be standard, you don't distribute excessive praise or disproportionate gratitude. It's a psychological reconditioning. You're teaching him, without words, that your validation is too valuable to be obtained without real effort. Second, strategic silence. Silence is one of the most underestimated forces in the female arsenal. When he sends a vague message, when he makes an ambiguous comment, when he demonstrates confusing behavior, the natural impulse is to question, seek clarity, fill the void with words. Strategic silence reverses this dynamic. It's the art of allowing the empty space between you to expand without the compulsive need to fill it. It's letting him feel the weight of his own words, the impact of his own behaviors, without the relief of your immediate reaction. The power of silence lies in its interpretative ambiguity. When you don't respond, you create a vacuum that he will fill with his own projections, fears, and hopes. As Johnson observed in his studies on psychological projections, we face our own internal demons in the silence of the... There's precise psychological science behind this. When confronted with ambiguity, the human brain works tirelessly to create meaning, to solve the enigma. It's what psychologists call intolerance of ambiguity, a particularly strong characteristic in the male psyche, conditioned to solve problems and eliminate uncertainties. Your silence creates a problem that he can't immediately solve, an emotional puzzle that continues to occupy space in his mind long after the interaction ended. What did she mean by that silence? Is she irritated? Disinterested? Thinking about someone else? This uncertainty keeps you present in his thoughts in a way that no amount of words could achieve. Practice silence, especially after statements from him that seem like tests or provocations. When he says, "I'm very busy this week," instead of responding with anxiety or attempts to renegotiate, try a simple "I understand" followed by silence. Observe how this vacuum destabilizes him and often leads him to fill the space with better offers, explanations, or reconsiderations. Third, calculated withdrawal. This is the most powerful of the three weapons. It's not an emotional or dramatic withdrawal based on hurt. It's a serene, strategic, almost imperceptible withdrawal. It's turning your energy back to yourself, your own interests and passions. It's allowing your world to expand. When you withdraw emotionally without warning, without drama, without explanation, you activate the most primordial of male fears, the fear of irrelevance. Suddenly, he realizes that he is no longer the center of your universe, and this awakens an almost primitive urgency to reconquer his privileged place. Calculated withdrawal is a sophisticated way of creating what psychologists call cognitive dissonance, a mental tension that arises when our beliefs don't align with perceived reality. He believed he had your interest guaranteed, your attention assured. When that reality changes without apparent explanation, it creates a dissonance that demands resolution. This withdrawal can manifest in various subtle forms. A change in the quality of your attention when you're together. You're physically present, but emotionally more distant. as if part of you were elsewhere. A gradual reduction in the frequency of your contact initiatives, a new passion or interest that absorbs your time and something that doesn't involve him, a slight but perceptible change in your emotional availability, a new independence in decisions that before you would share with him. The beauty of calculated withdrawal is that it cannot be directly confronted without him appearing insecure or controlling. If he asks, "You're different, what happened?" you can genuinely respond, "I'm feeling good, just focused on some new projects." An impossible answer to contest without appearing possessive. Johnson noted in his studies that contemporary man lives in internal conflict between his desire for connection and his fear of losing autonomy. Calculated withdrawal activates this paradox. When you become more autonomous, you simultaneously trigger in him the desire for reconnection, creating an erotic and emotional tension that he feels an almost physical need to resolve. The three weapons in synergy. True mastery comes when you learn to apply these three-weapon combination, creating a synergistic effect that is greater than the sum of its parts. Emotional scarcity creates the ground, strategic silence plants the seed, and calculated withdrawal makes obsession bloom. Men don't become obsessed with the predictable stability that some believe. They fall in love with emotional intensity, with the challenge, with the woman they can't totally control. Show interest, yes, but limited and measured. Never that you need him, or that he is the center of your universe. Cut contact strategically, exactly when he expects more, at the height of a good conversation. Be the one to end the call or leave first. Leave him wanting more. This is a masterstroke against his ego and his need for control. The most powerful moment to apply these techniques is precisely when everything seems to be going. It's when you're at the peak of connection, when conversation flows naturally, when the chemistry between you is palpable. This is the perfect moment for an elegant as Oscar Wilde said, "Always leave them wanting more." It's counterintuitive, but it's exactly when he thinks he has you that you should subtly show that it's not quite so. In practice, this means creating patterns of healthy If you had a deep conversation yesterday, perhaps today you're less available, not out of manipulation, but because you genuinely have a rich and multifaceted life beyond. Observe how even the most confident men, the most desired, respond differently to women who apply these weapons. The same man who ignores messages from women who show obvious interest will respond almost instantly to the woman who practices emotional scarcity, strategic silence, and calculated withdrawal. Learn to recognize the moments when he is testing your limits, reducing his effort, being less attentive, perhaps even creating small provocations to see how you react. These are the crucial moments where most women intensify the search for validation, but where you, strategically, retreat. These tests are inevitable in the dance of attraction, and how you respond to them fundamentally determines the power dynamic that is established. When he sends a vague message or cancels plans at the last minute, your instinctive response may be to bombard him with questions or express disappointment. Resist that impulse. Instead, respond with a brief, "All right," and then apply strategic silence, followed by a subtle, calculated. Let him wonder if he passed your tests, not vice versa. Cultivate interests that don't include, not just to create jealousy, but to genuinely expand your world. Nothing is more attractive than a woman passionate about her own, who has an internal source of happiness that doesn't depend on. This is the fundamental truth that Johnson discovered in his archetypal analysis. The deepest male attraction is not awakened by physical beauty or emotional availability, but by the presence of a feminine soul complete in itself, which doesn't need him for its fulfillment, but chooses him anyway. It's the paradox of independence and conscious choice that creates irresistible magnetism. When you're together, be totally present. Give him your complete attention, your genuine interest. But when you're away, don't be constantly available. Don't respond to messages instantly. Don't reorganize your plans at the first sign that he wants to see you. Establish and maintain healthy boundaries. This is the sophisticated dance of attraction that Johnson identified in his analyses of the archetypal feminine, the alternation between warm proximity and intriguing distance. between surrender and mystery, between presence and absence. It's this dance that keeps male interest not only alive, but intense. As Johnson observed, male desire flourishes in the space between having and not having, between knowing and not completely knowing. It's in this liminal space, in this frontier between presence and absence, that male obsession finds its most fertile ground. Imagine the situation. He sends you a vague message, testing your reaction. The common woman responds with uncertainty, seeks explanations. The confident woman, on the other, retreats. She may leave the message unanswered for a good while, or respond briefly, neutrally, without any trace of neediness. This reaction, or better, the absence of it, destroys his entire strategy. He expected your fear, but obtained indifference. And this completely unbalances him. He enters a silent but powerful emotional crisis. Let's see what happens in his internal world at this crucial moment. When he sends that ambiguous message, perhaps an "I'm busy today" without explanation, or a "let's see later" without commitment, he is, consciously or unconsciously, testing his emotional power over you. He expects anxiety, perhaps even a touch of despair. He expects you to ask, "Is everything okay?" That you try to guess what he's thinking, that you offer alternatives, that you demonstrate your continued availability. In short, he expects confirmation that he still has control over your emotional state. When instead, he receives silence or a neutral response, "No problem. Enjoy your day." Without any sign of disappointment or questioning, something profound happens inside him. First comes confusion. The script he had in mind is abruptly interrupted. It's like an actor who says his cue and expects the rehearsed response, but is met with a completely different line, or worse, with silence. Then, doubt arises. Does she not care as much as I thought? Is there someone else? Have I lost my appeal to? These questions begin to spin in his mind, creating a spiral of uncertainty that is precisely the opposite of what he expected to cause in you. Next comes reassessment. He begins to look at you in a new light. What before seemed secure, now seems uncertain. What before seemed conquered, now seems at risk. And in this reassessment, your value in his eyes increases exponentially. Finally, compensatory action emerges. He feels an almost visceral need to reaffirm his value to you, to recover that special position that he now realizes he may not have. Messages become more frequent, invitations more concrete, attention more focused and genuine. This entire process represents a profound power inversion. The woman who seemed to be at the mercy of his inconsistencies suddenly becomes the prize to be reconquered. Not through conscious manipulation, but through a deep understanding of the emotional tides that move the masculine heart. You are the prize. This uncertainty, not provoked by him, but deliberately destabilizes his power pattern. It forces him to reconnect emotionally, because suddenly, with a sharp sting to his ego, he feels he could lose you without apparent reason. And this feeling of an imminent and unexplained loss can destroy him internally. It makes him think about you constantly, and, paradoxically, he begins to desire you more. You become an enigma he can't decipher. A song that won't leave his head, a thought that haunts him before sleep, and is there again when he wakes up. Not because you are dramatic or driven by conflicts, but because you are unpredictably calm, strategically absent, and deliberately indifferent. This is where the complete transformation happens. The woman who before sought validation now becomes the source of validation. The one who before pursued is now pursued. The one who before tried to understand now becomes the mystery to be. This inversion isn't just about power. It's about restoring the natural balance that should have existed from the beginning. You aren't manipulating. You're simply refusing to participate in a game where the rules were made to keep you at a disadvantage. Male psychology, as Robert Johnson revealed in his analyses of animus and anima, is deeply attracted to feminine mystery. The man may say he wants predictability and ease, but his unconscious yearns for the enigma, The challenge, the woman who remains, in part, unreachable. When you become this enigma, not through artifice, but through genuine reconnection with your inner power, you activate deep archetypes in his psyche. You cease to be just a specific woman, become the embodiment of the eternal feminine that has fascinated poets, philosophers, and, yes, psychologists like Johnson. Observe what happens at this stage. He begins to ask more genuine questions about truly wanting to know your thoughts, your feelings, your desires. He begins to observe you with new intensity, as if trying to memorize every detail. He becomes more attentive to your needs, more tuned to your emotions, not because you demanded it, but because he now deeply values any access to your inner. The previous patterns of behavior, those last-minute cancellations, those vague responses, that intermittent attention, begin to disappear. In their place emerges a more consistent, more attentive, more genuinely engaged presence. Not because you trained him like a pet with rewards and punishments, but because you fundamentally transformed how he sees you, and, consequently, how he sees himself in relation to you. This is the most powerful relational alchemy possible. You haven't changed who he is, but you've changed how he experiences himself when he's with you. And that change, when it comes from within, is the only one that truly lasts. Always remember, as Robert Johnson taught us about the depths of the psyche, a man can resist your most eloquent words, your most logical arguments, but he cannot ignore the emotional vacuum you create with your strategic absence. Your calculated indifference hits him more deeply than any explanation. Don't punish him with anger. Don't shout your frustration. Just disappear strategically from his emotional radar. When you finally take complete control of your emotions and stop begging for attention as if it were necessary for survival, something magical happens. He begins to feel, with a mixture of frustration and fascination, a woman he can't emotionally control. And that is true power. Johnson dedicated his life to understanding the archetypal patterns that shape our most intimate relationships. His deepest insight may have been understanding that what seems to be our greatest vulnerability, our need for emotional connection, can become our greatest strength when embraced with wisdom and self-knowledge. True feminine power isn't in subjugating the masculine, but in understanding it so deeply that you can dance with it, instead of fighting against it. It isn't in winning emotional battles, but in transcending them completely. When you move beyond the desperate need for approval, when you fully inhabit your own emotional space, you become not only more attractive to him, but more complete for yourself. Your happiness is no longer hostage to his oscillations. Your self-esteem no longer depends on crumbs of validation. It is in this space of serene self-sufficiency that you discover the final secret. True power isn't about controlling the other, but about freeing yourself from the. It's about creating relationships where both can be truly free and, paradoxically, deeply connected. If this reflection on the power of strategic indifference and the deep psychology of the male ego touched something in you, subscribe to the channel so we can continue together this exploration of relational dynamics. Leave in the comments a situation where you applied the blow to the ego without realizing it, or a pattern of constant validation that you're ready to break starting today. Your like is more than it's a sign that this message resonated with your inner truth. And if you know any friend who is stuck in the cycle of desperate validation, share this video. Sometimes, we just need a gentle reminder that our emotional power doesn't come from pursuing, but from confidently retreating. See you in the next video. Until then, remember, the true blow to the male ego isn't an attack, it's an awakening to your own worth.